Hello once again, my beautiful viewers. It is I, Rtyuiope, from Rtyuiope's Gameroom with the long-awaited review for Yakuza 2. Wait, what? Hardly anyone watched my videos on Zero and Kiwami? What do you mean they were sloppily made? What do you mean that other people made better reviews for those games? What do you mean that no one watches this channel based off of my personality? I'll have you know I have a very dry personality. Okay. Well, anyway, Yakuza 2. Yakuza 2, or as it's known in Japan, Ryu ga Gotoku 2, or Like a Dragon 2, is the direct sequel to Yakuza 1. Yakuza 2 was initially released in 2006 for the PS2. It's once again an action-adventure beat-em-up game that was directed by Ryuta Ueda. Yakuza 2 was developed with making a more dramatic and engaging story in mind. Also, due to fan responses of the first game, this game was made to have better combat and gameplay. The combat was made easier to control and added the series staple ability of being able to change your lock-on mid-combo. Also, unlike the first game, Yakuza 2 kept its Japanese audio when it was transferred over to America. Sorry, Mark Hamill, but not today. One thing I can truly appreciate about the direction of the voice acting of this game and its remake Kiwami 2 is that the voice actors were told not to rely on anime cliches when doing their voice recordings. They felt like having over-the-top sounding lines would ruin the tension of the main story, and this definitely works to its benefit. In 2017, and just this year in 2018, Yakuza Kiwami 2 was released. Kiwami 2 is a remake of Yakuza 2, much in the same vein of Kiwami, which is a remake of Yakuza 1. The game was initially leaked on the PlayStation Store, and was then just later revealed 2 days later with Yakuza Online, Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, and Shin Yakuza. The game was developed on the Dragon engine, which is what Yakuza 6 uses. The game most likely received a Kiwami remake because of the success of Kiwami 1. Yakuza 2 and Kiwami 2 both received positive reviews from both fans and critics alike. However, there is a smaller subset of fans who resent Kiwami 2 due to cut content. Yakuza Kiwami 2 removes a decent chunk of the original OST due to copyright issues, cuts out a side quest line, and cuts out a whole area, albeit a small and confusing one. Nevertheless, this killed the remake for some fans, but you're here to hear my opinion, of course. And what do I think about this controversy? I don't care. I know that's blasphemy to some, but Kiwami 2 stands out so well on its own merits that it's not hard to look past some of the cut content. And yes, for the sake of this review, I did play both Kiwami 2 and Yakuza 2, just so I could compare and contrast. And while yes, the original soundtrack is definitely superior, and I definitely would much prefer if Kiwami 2 didn't cut any content, period, that doesn't cut all the value out of Kiwami 2. Kiwami 2 is still an incredibly fun game, whether you're coming to revisit a classic from a new take, or a new fan getting into the series for the first time. Both Kiwami 2 and Yakuza 2 are great, and there's no wrong answer to which is more worth your time. And besides, the main story is virtually untouched, so it's not like you're missing out on any main narrative from either version. One thing Kiwami 2 has over Yakuza 2 in my opinion is the MAJIMA saga. I know some older fans are sick of the MAJIMA fan service, but I honestly see no problem with it. Besides, the MAJIMA saga solely exists to tie up a loose end from Yakuza 0, so if anything, this is sort of the end of the MAJIMA fan service. It's a harmless, fun little 3-chapter prologue to the events of Yakuza 2 that is accessed on the main menu. I love this little saga since it gave a much-needed closure to an arc from Yakuza 0, and I appreciate that. But I digress. The art style is once again more realistic leaning, so there isn't much to comment about. The tattoo designs, as usual, are great on the characters, and the characters themselves are all believable and unique at the same time. I have no real complaints about that. The game's music was once again composed by Hidenori Shoji and various others to help bring the world of these two games to life. The big difference between the two versions, however, is the tone of the soundtracks. The original soundtrack is more rock, electronic, and jazzy, giving a unique feel to the experience. Some of my favorite songs from the soundtracks include As a Man, As a Brother, No Laughter, and a scattered moment. The Yakuza Kiwami 2 soundtrack remixes several songs from the original OST and adds some new ones as well. The songs I like mostly from this version are Outlaw's Lullaby, Hit and Kill, and A. Oh, and how could I forget Majima? The original Yakuza 2 has more or less the same gameplay as Yakuza 1, but with some minor improvements. So, fixed camera angles are still a thing, so I'm already not the biggest fan in the world. But overall, the game is definitely an improvement from the original. If you can look past the fixed camera angles, the game is still a fun time. You predominantly use hand-to-hand combat to fight enemies, heat moves make a comeback to deliver devastating damage. Also, the always fun to use environmental weapons are back. You can pick up bikes, traffic cones, and various other things to use as weapons. You explore Kamurocho and see the return of Sotenbori, that is if you've played Zero first. In these areas you can also explore, find items, discover side quests, and find little distractions, fight in random encounters, and progress in the story. Kiwami 2 on the other hand plays very similar to Yakuza 6. There aren't any loading screens between combat and exploration, the combat feels a little bit more fluent, and everything feels more smooth in general. Oh, and also, no more fixed camera angles. If I had to pick between which gameplay I preferred, I'd definitely go for Kiwami 2 in a heartbeat. Kiwami 2 just felt more fun to play in my opinion. The side quests are both engaging and silly in both versions of Yakuza 2, and I always recommend doing all of them in every game if you can. Yakuza Kiwami 2 also adds the Cabaret Club minigame, which is like a management type game that is fun in short bursts, but I never really recommend playing the whole Cabaret Club from start to finish in one sitting. It'll burn you out bad. The game also adds this weird RTS thing for MAJIMA construction. It too is really fun in short bursts, but don't try to finish it in one sitting. Overall, I had a good time with the original Yakuza 2, but honestly, Yakuza Kiwami 2 takes home the cake in my opinion, easy. Hello and welcome to another physical edition. Today we are taking a look at Yakuza Kiwami 2. Now, just like the last Yakuza video I did, I do not have the PS2 version and instead I opted to emulate it, but I do plan on getting the PS2 version at some point, but as you can assume, ya boy here ain't made of money, so for right now I just own physically Kiwami 2. But I'll be sure to go back and do a physical edition review of Yakuza 1 and 2 when I get those. But without further ado, let's just take a quick little peek at this physical edition. Now, of course, I got the Steelbook edition here of Yakuza Kiwami 2 on PS4, which I think is the only edition that is available, which is fine. I love Steelbooks, except there's one problem with this that I will get to in just a moment. But without further delay, let's just talk about it. So here we have the slip cover, which has the PS4 logo and the Yakuza Kiwami 2 logo right there, and it says Steelbook Edition. All this little text and stuff is on the slip cover. Underneath that is just the Steelbook itself, which has Kazuma Kiryu right here with the dragon on his back. And on the other side, it's just your standard case fare, shows some screens from the game, gets you hyped up for it and all that stuff. But let's just take this slip cover off. And here you see we just have Kazuma Kiryu with his dragon. And on the other side we have Ryuji Goda with his dragon on his back. It's a really cool steelbook. It goes really well with the Kiwami steelbook, which unfortunately Yakuza 0 is not steelbook, or else I would have gotten it like that, so all three could be with each other, being all steelbook and stuff, but unfortunately that's not what we got. But, you know, that's quite alright. On the inside, we just have a picture of Sotenbori, and we have this little, like, warning sheet and all that stuff. And here's my one complaint with these Sega Steelbooks. Persona 5 had this issue, and Kiwami 1 had this issue, and it's that it's almost impossible to take this disc out of the Steelbook without, let me see if I can get close in there, like bending the disc. I don't like doing that, and I think that's really not good for the disc and really increases your chances of snapping it in half, and I really hope that Sega fixes their steelbooks for the future. Otherwise, cosmetically, it looks great. I love this physical edition. It's just that disc issue is a bit of a pain in the butt. But anyway, that has been this month's physical edition for Yakuza Kiwami 2, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the review. Thank you for tuning in. The game is set a year after the events of Yakuza 1, where Kiryu is now living with Haruka to live a more peaceful and simple life. But everything falls apart when the 5th chairman of the Tojo clan, Terada, is assassinated by the rival Omi Alliance. Now with Terada's dying wish to make an alliance between the Omi Alliance and the Tojo clan, Kiryu does everything in his power to make this happen. But at almost every turn he is stopped by Ryuji Goda, the son of the chairman of the Omi Alliance. You find out pretty quickly that Ryuji had a hand in the events of Yakuza 1, which makes your rivalry a little bit more personal. Now, Kiryu has to face Ryuji's group of rogue Omi Alliance Yakuza, the Korean Mafia, and the police force to try and stop the alliance between the two clans before it is put into action. Kiryu is also assisted by Koharu Sayama, who is the headstrong police officer who has Kiryu in her protective custody. There's also a romance there that is actually pretty sweet and warms my cold, bitter heart. What do I think of the main story, though? Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I might be able to consider it my favorite Yakuza game next to 0 so far, but the story isn't without its issues, however. There is one part in particular that has no effect on me, really. Semi-spoilers if you don't want to be spoiled, then skip to this time on the screen, but anyway, let me get into it. So essentially, Ryuji keeps mentioning this big war that's about to happen once his men invade Kamurocho. This point keeps getting brought up over and over again and keeps building up, especially towards the end. And well, when you get there, you see a cutscene where all of Ryuji's men flood Kamurocho. But once you walk through Kamurocho after that scene, everything is the same. You'll randomly encounter Ryuji's men, but there clearly isn't a war going on. This is something they didn't even try to fix with the Kiwami 2 remake, which sucks in my opinion. But yeah, that's just my main issue with Yakuza 2's story. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Yakuza Kiwami 2 also includes a short bonus campaign for Goro Majima. The plot is more or less a device to tell you how Majima left the Tojo clan and wrap up a little plot thread from Yakuza 0 in the process. It's an extremely short mini-campaign, and I won't give anything away, but I personally recommend not touching it until you beat the main story. So, anyway, Yakuza 2, and by extension Kiwami 2, are great games. I love both versions. I have to say, it's pretty much a tie between this and Yakuza 0 as my favorite game in the series so far, and I definitely recommend picking up whichever version sounds best to you. My personal bias is telling me to lean more towards Kiwami 2 as the superior version, but I know that opinion is a death sentence in the eyes of some fans, so I'll just leave it up to you to decide which version sounds more appealing to you. And don't worry, there isn't a wrong answer no matter how gatekeepy some people can get. Both versions are great, both versions get across the same message. Playing one version instead of the other won't ruin your enjoyment of the other game since it's almost exactly the same story, but that's just my 2 cents. Now, If you'll excuse me, I have to go in hibernation until Yakuza 3 and 5 are ported over to PS4 and brought to America. Well, until next time, this has been Rtyuiope from Rtyuiope's Game Room, signing out.